going then. So again, thank you everyone so much who is logged on. I know we're really excited about this. This is something that I'm really passionate about because I feel like there is gatekeeping in terms of women in the outdoors, especially when women want to go out on their own. You get a lot of like, well, that's dangerous. Do you know what you're doing? Kind of stuff like that. So I think this is a great way to learn information and just to share it, because that's what like the outdoors are, is constant sharing of information and sharing of like experiences in the outdoors. So a little bit about me. My name's Maggie. I'm 27. I live in the North Lake Tahoe region of Northern California. I am by trade, I am a trauma ICU nurse. And then before I was a nurse, I also got my wilderness first responders certification. So a lot of my stuff is kind of geared towards first aid, safety, outdoor wilderness, like wilderness first aid, kind of stuff like that. But I've pretty much have like, when I was in college, I went to the University of Nevada, which is a great kind of like jumping off point for a lot of the Western states. So I went on tons of road trips, backpacking trips, camping trips by myself and in groups, kind of across like the Mountain West. And then I've also driven across the country and back 3 times. So I've done a lot of like long distance road trips as well. Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm Bailey. I'm 22 years old and I'm typically based out of San Francisco, California. At the moment, I'm living in Sacramento, but I do call most of Northern California my home. Before COVID, I was an event coordinator. And so I'm really good at the organizing aspect of road tripping and doing other sort of outdoor activities. I'm also really good at the researching phase because that's what I do for a living. I've done about 30,000 solo road tripping miles. So my bulk of my experience is road tripping. But when I'm doing that, I'm also hiking and camping and typically solo. So just going over our kind of agenda for today. We don't want to overwhelm anyone with information. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to plan a road trip, because that seemed to be something a lot of people were interested in doing. The setup and the gear you're going to need in order to car camp and road trip. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting and how to save money doing it, because it gets expensive quick. Maggie's going to touch on safety. We're going to touch a little bit on outdoor etiquette, and then we're going to open up for an open Q&A. We're also going to be taking any questions you guys already have. So if you want to throw questions down in the chat while we're talking, we'll follow up with those at the end of this presentation.
All right.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk first on how to plan a road trip. It's very different for everyone. And so I'm just going to touch on some very basic points. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. So first of all, I implore you to think about the length of your trip, especially if this is your first time doing it. I've done 2 and 3 month solo trips, but I worked up to that. And part of that is going out for a weekend or going out for just a solo hike. Part of it is getting that like mental stamina in order to do it, and also figuring out what your comfort levels are, because your comfort levels will probably be a little bit different when you're all alone. So definitely encourage you to go maybe someplace you're already very familiar with. Start small with a weekend trip, and start small with smaller, easier, more fun front country hikes before you really go do a 20-mile solo hike. So research is super important in this, because I can't tell you everything you need to know on planning a road trip and doing something like this. There's a lot of knowledge about the individual areas you're planning on visiting. And again, jumping off points are going to be very different for people. So my first jumping off point would figure out exactly where you're starting from. There's a very good chance you'll be starting from where you live, but that could be different if you're deciding to fly into somewhere, rent a car, and explore a destination and fly back out. So that part of the road trip process can be very different for everyone. So when you're figuring this out, again, kind of figure out where you're starting, where you're ending, where your key destinations are. Next up, I would have you guys just explore some possible routes between your places. Doing full highways can be really, really boring, interstates especially, but also you don't want to spend too much time in the car. So kind of look around, see if there's scenic routes that you might want to explore. Also use Google Maps. Google Maps is a really good resource for estimating the amount of time you're going to be driving, but it's a really poor resource at actually planning out your route. And a big part of that is Google Maps doesn't really know how to, Google Maps just doesn't know what routes are good, and also doesn't really realize what roads are there and what roads aren't there. So as Maggie lives up in Lake Tahoe area, there's a lot of summer routes that are dirt roads that are just impassable during the winter. So definitely keep those in mind when you're researching. See what routes are gravel that you might be able to pass with your car. What routes are highly experienced four-wheel drive users only sort of routes, and what routes are going to be closed in the winter. And then if you're exploring the desert, what routes you might not want to risk because you'll be in the desert and you don't want to be stranded somewhere that's going to be 100 or 120 degrees. Then after that, or again during this process, just look for things to do at your key destinations. And when you're route planning, you can also look at what's nearby. Just having a paper map is really helpful because a lot of that will point out points of interest. You can also request state tourism information. They're really good about sending you places that might be a little off the beaten path if that's what you're looking for. And they're also really good at sending like insider tips and tricks and then coupons for some experiences as well. National park sites are also just a really good jumping off point for a lot of the popular trails and points of interest. And then also you'll have to start looking at this point at what road closures you might have or what activities may be closed due to the season. And then also the type of weather that you're looking to experience. Because if you're experiencing different weather, that's going to change the rest of your trip, the rest of your gear setup, and a little bit of your safety plan. I strongly encourage making some sort of campsite reservations or just some sort of general plan if you're going to rely on first come, first serve camping. Campsites have a tendency to book up in really popular places. And like I'm out here in Zion, if I were here in the summer, there would be no way I could find like first come, first serve nearby the park at this point. Even BLM land around here can get full really, really quickly. So definitely look into that and just spend as much time researching as you possibly can. And then Maggie is going to touch a little bit more on how to find trail opens.
So once you kind of have a like general idea of where you want to stop, what you want to see, now it's like, all right, how do I get there on a trail? So basically your cell phone is going to end up being your best friend. And as much as I want to preach about like being self-sufficient, paper, compass, maps, there's a lot of really awesome new technology out there that can really help guide you in things to do. So the first one I want to bring up is the AllTrails app. It's awesome. I think if you're like one of their pro members, or if you like even just create an account with them, you can download the offline version, which is really great if you don't have cell service. So in advance before you leave, or like maybe before you leave like a hotel or something, you can download the trail onto your app. And that's really great because if you get off the trail while you're hiking, you can look on that map with your GPS signal to see if you're on or off the trail, which I think is really good. People love to leave reviews on AllTrails, just like people love to leave reviews on Yelp. I mean, people go into way detail about their experience and their hikes on AllTrails, which can be a great kind of like crowdsource of like information, but make sure you always check the details out in that. The next one is going to be the new National Park app. This is like literally just brand new. It just rolled out. They're still in their like beta version of it. So it's not even like the full app. But I mean, after like 10 minutes of me just like scrolling through the app, it is awesome. So I'm going to reference Yosemite a lot because I live about 2.5 hours from Yosemite, and that's the park I'm most familiar with. They have where to camp, what to do, trails to see, hours of visitor centers, what's open right now, what's closed right now. Yosemite's pretty seasonal because they do get a lot of snow, which roads are open, which roads are closed. And then I kind of like scrolled through some like other national parks, and the information seems pretty similar across the board. So I'm excited to kind of see like where they go with this app. But I think that's definitely, if you're planning on visiting a national park, that is definitely an app you should download on your phone. The next is going to be Gaia. Gaia is a little more of like an experienced kind of topography GPS app. It's really good if you are familiar with GPX files. I went on the trip that's in this photo. I went on a big backpacking trip, and I was able to download a trail that someone had already planned out with like where water sources were, campsites were, and it all like layered the information onto the app. It did take a little bit of time to kind of get used to it. But I think that's another really good resource if you are looking to put the time into it. The next is like regional and local Facebook groups. I mean, all of us found each other on a Facebook group. So I think like crowdsourced and like that kind of information can be really helpful on Facebook groups. But again, I would say take everything with a grain of salt. Someone can have a really good experience of like where you're going and what you want to see, and just make sure you do all your own research behind it and just blindly rely on someone from the internet. Next is social media. There are thousands, I feel like, TikTok, Instagram accounts, Facebook pages dedicated to like showcasing beautiful trails in different areas. And again, take those with a grain of salt. These people are often like paid influencers who are putting out a lot of this content, which is great, but always, always, always do research before you go. That's going to kind of be like another driving home point of this presentation. And then lastly, paper map and a compass. Like I have a map of Yosemite National Park. I bring it with me when I go to the park. I think that's a really important thing. If your phone dies, how are you going to know how to get out of where you are? I preach about being on your phone and the technology that comes with it, but we should be able to roughly locate ourselves on a map and be able to guide ourselves at least back to like the car. So the next slide is basically like, how are you going to find your camp spot? So I'll briefly touch right now on the dispersed camping and like the government managed side of it. So I'm going to go into dispersed camping, which is BLM land, free land, not like public land. It's also very well known as boondocking. These are going to be free campsites without amenities. So you need to be completely self-sufficient and research more for like any further regulations in the state you're going to. I camp a lot in the state of Nevada, and the state of Nevada is primarily BLM land, like completely public land. So apps to kind of look for BLM land is going to be Free Roam and The Dirt. Even just their basic free versions of the apps are great. What you'll do to find these dispersed campsites is you will set your like price range to 0, and then that will typically show you where they are. A lot of them are well off the beaten path. If you want to take like a scenic route, this could be a way to find campsites. But again, these campsites could be, 10, 15 miles off of the highway down a dirt road. I've noticed that some of the more popular ones that I just looked at in my area do have pretty good reviews on for people to look at. But again, research, Google well before you go. These dispersed camping, you probably need a 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive car to get to a lot of them. Not all, but definitely some. National forest roads are going to be like a little more tricky. So you can disperse camp on at like a dead end or like a turnout of a national forest road. Sometimes these are on apps, sometimes they're not. These are more just like, for me, like an example that I have is driving from like the east side of the Sierras up into Yosemite. Outside of Yosemite is a big buffer zone of public land. Most national parks do have a buffer zone of public land that you could camp on technically. So a lot of turnouts and dead ends, like before you get up into Yosemite from the east side of the Sierras, are actually, people will just like pull their car off. I would not really recommend setting up a full campsite right in a turnout or a dead end. But if you're just looking to like crash somewhere very quickly overnight, this could be a really good idea. Lastly, national parks. So national parks have very limited dispersed car camping. And when I'm talking about a national park right now, I'm talking about like Yosemite, Yellowstone, Grand Teton National Park, Acadia National Park. Not necessarily, there's like national monuments and stuff like that that are like have parking lots that are actually a lot more friendly to car camping in their parking lots. But national parks, they call it just backcountry camping if you're looking on their websites. And a large percent of it is like really only accessed by foot or backpacking. I'm going to pull up just some like direct quotes I have on my phone from the website, from like the National Park Service website. So it says dispersed camping in national forests typically means parking at a primitive campsite or in a pull-off just off like a forest access road. Dispersed camping has a couple really tricky rules with it. So first, it is not allowed in the vicinity of developed recreation areas. So you have to be over a mile away from a developed campground. And two, you have to be 100 feet away from a stream or a body of water. That's kind of standard anywhere you're going to look for a campground. So again, kind of out on the West Coast, a lot of our big national parks, the dispersed camping is going to be accessed by foot and backpacking. But again, many parks are surrounded by a buffer zone of BLM land or federally managed land. I know that most times when my friends and I go to Yosemite, we actually camp outside of the park in a campground for like, it's like managed by like the National Forest Service, or literally if we're just going for a day, we pull off into one of those turnouts and sleep in the back of cars. And then, yeah, that's kind of what I have for dispersed camping and boondocking, really.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump into finding established campgrounds. BLM camping and boondocking isn't for everyone, especially if it's your first trip. There's definitely a safety net to being in an established campground with other people. It does come with the price though. So you're going to have to make reservations at most places. There is a fee associated, and as much as it's nice to have neighbors and when you need help, it also is not fun to have neighbors. So just take that with a grain of salt. Jumping off, we're going to talk a little bit about national park campgrounds. Typically, they're very well run and have great amenities. You're going to have your picnic tables, and you're going to have usually pretty flat tent sites. You can take RVs there. A lot of times there's paid showers and great restrooms. But on the downside, a lot of the reservations get booked up months ahead of time, especially in really popular parks. So you're going to book any of your reservations through recreation.gov. They do tend to keep a couple sites at that first come, first serve, but we're seeing that transition out. Grand Tetons is transitioning out of, I believe, all of their first come, first serve sites in the entire park to reservable sites. So that's where the trend is going, which isn't great for all of us like last minute campers. Definitely search your national park site for any park specific regulations, but there's typically a ton of signage when you're entering the campground with your standard rules of quiet hours and your check-in, check-out time. Then we're going to talk a little bit about national forest campgrounds. Again, they're just managed by the National Forest instead of the national park, but it's also going to be reserved through recreation.gov. And those are going to you can typically find those a week or two before your trip. They're not as in high demand. State park campgrounds can be a little bit more tricky. Most state campgrounds could be reserved through reservationamerica.com, but a lot of states are moving into their own website models. California is one of them, Oregon is one of them. So definitely, if you're looking on the West Coast in those states, or check out the state that you're visiting and see if they have any sites on reserveamerica.com. Otherwise, look at their site. And then a lot of the states in the middle of America tend to have a lot of first come, first serve, and they don't tend to book up nearly as often. Lastly, you've got city and county park campgrounds, which are just, they vary drastically. Calling is the best way to contact most of these. Some of them have online bookings, some of them have phone bookings, and some of them are purely first come, first serve. So it's really a mixed bag on that one. And then we're going to move and talk about finding campsites that are privately owned / other places to crash. So you've got a trip this weekend and you can't find anything that you want through the government site. That's totally fine. There's other options. There's a couple different apps. Campedema app is fantastic. Go Camping America is a little bit more focused towards RVers and families, but camping with RVers and families is really great if you're solo camping and you're not comfortable yet, because they tend to be very welcoming and can take care of solo female travelers if you need anything. If you haven't used HipCamp, it's interesting, and you can find some really interesting sites off of it. It's basically Airbnb for camping. And so some private campgrounds will list their campsites, but also people will list up their backyards, or businesses will list out their front yards or backyards. It's a really mixed bag, but you can find some really good deals on there. I camped on the Mississippi River for $5 a night through HipCamp, which was fantastic. Just beware that some HipCamp sites are dispersed camping. Definitely check out the amenities at every HipCamp site, and you can filter by which amenities you want. So if you want restrooms and a pool and showers and the whole shebang, you can definitely find that. But if you're looking for $5 a night without any of that, you can find that as well. Airbnb, if you search, you can find tent sites on there. People are tending to open up like backyards for tent camping. If you're really desperate for the night, it's a good option. Or if you're camping in an urban area, then it's also a really good option. Lastly, we have chained campsites. So big national chains, KOAs, and on the East Coast, Yogi Bear Jellystone is also a great option. They're going to have security and so many amenities, and you're going to get the same thing every time. If you're concerned about COVID, they've been fantastic with their COVID response. So I definitely recommend it. And I don't think there's been a single night that I have looked for a KOA and not been able to find one with availability that night. Even in the summer, even outside of Bryce or Zion and these really popular places, there tends to still be, a couple of sites available. They're also great for coming in after hours. If you decide, you can't make it to your next destination in time, things change, and you're looking for a place to crash, those sorts of campsites are really great. And a lot of them are right off the freeway. So you can get in and out very quickly. And then lastly, I'm just going to touch a little bit on parking spots and truck stops, especially when you are road tripping. Sometimes things go wrong. It's just part of life. And sometimes you're just exhausted and don't feel like trying to find a campsite for the night, don't feel like setting up a tent. And so this is a great option for those nights. It's going to be free, but setting up an actual camp outside of your car is 9 times out of 10 not allowed. So states run highway rests like truck stops, and they're usually pretty safe. The amenities and truck stops vary wildly by state. And as you do this more and talk to people, you'll find out which states, are better than others. But you're typically going to find restrooms, vending machines, a lot of tourist information. In some states, they have a security officer and maybe even like wandering security officers, and then picnic areas as well. Again, varies a lot by state and which amenities you're going to find. Next up is going to be travel stops and large gas stations that are aimed towards travelers or truckers. Think Love's or Pilots or Flying J, which are all big national brands. They don't just allow car camping overnight in their parking lots, they often encourage it. All you should do is definitely spend a few dollars when you're there. Buy a little something or fill up your gas tank there, and you should be good to go. They also have really clean restrooms, pay showers, which are some of the best pay showers you're going to find on the road, laundry facilities at a lot of them, and a couple other amenities. If you are looking for gear, especially if you need to do any car maintenance, a lot of that stuff's going to be there. There might even be like a car service station on some of them, which is really nice. Lastly, you're going to have just like run-of-the-mill commercial parking lots. I recommend Walmart and Bass Pro Shops personally, but there's a lot of other options and a lot of other companies that allow it. A big part of this is looking online before you get out there, or just call the store manager and ask for permission. But I've camped in 30 or 40 Walmart parking lots and never had a problem in any of them. They typically have security overnight. And again, a lot of them are 24-hour Walmart. So if you need to go use the restroom, you're in a great place for it. If you need to resupply, much as I dislike Walmart, it's also a really good place to resupply for things.
Okay, so I am gonna we're gonna start kind of getting into the nitty gritty of like your car camping setup, the gear you need, kind of what that is gonna start looking like. So now you've planned your trip, you know where you want to go. Now, like, what the heck do you bring? So the things to really focus on are your sleep system, which is going to be like your sleeping bag, air mattress, sleeping bag, that kind of stuff. And we'll go into detail on that. Your shelter, is that going to be your tent or your car? Like which, or both. Next, your gear basics. I kind of broke that down into kitchen supplies. What do you need to cook while you're on the road? Because eating out every night is going to rack up your bill very high. And not planning ahead for kitchen supplies. That stuff's kind of can be pricey if you buy it on the road. So how to plan for that. Your camp setup, toiletries, safety items, and then like hiking gear that you need if like you're going to be going hiking. And then lastly, storage. So you see all these people on the internet, they have these beautiful vans, cars, trucks with these like very expensive platform beds, kitchens, all that kind of stuff. I am here to tell you, you do not need that. You do not need to spend thousands of dollars building a platform bed in the back of your car with pull-out wooden drawers to make a successful road trip or a car camping trip. I personally have a hand-me-down Thule roof box that my parents gave me that's probably 20 years old that goes on the top of my car. And I have a Subaru Outback. Like I don't have any like fancy car or anything. Even if you, and like, okay, so now say you can't acquire a Thule box or a roof box, I would recommend like weatherproof large bins. You can buy them from Walmart or Target for like $10 a bin, and that'll keep all your gear organized. And like when you go to sleep, if it's just you, you can like push it all over to the side of your car if you're sleeping in your car. But it's another really great way to keep all of your stuff organized. So for example, I have a kitchen bin, like a gear bin with like hiking gear where I keep my headlamp, hiking pole, my tent, my sleeping pad, just like miscellaneous, my backpack when I'm not using it, and then just like miscellaneous gear. And then you can have another bin with like your safety gear. So that would be like, like your car car safety stuff, and like we'll go into all that stuff later, but OCD, organization, will make for a successful camping trip and car camping trip and road trip. Like the more you can organize, the more I feel like successful you'll be on the road. So I have which is like, I call it the big three. It's very commonly known as the big three. This is not like my term. But that's going to be your tent, your sleeping bag, and your backpack. So tent, are you going to be sleeping in your car, or are you going to be pitching a tent or kind of doing like a combination of the two? It will make like a big difference in what you choose. Your sleeping bag, are you going to be picking or like, are you just going to be sleeping in the car and you're kind of sleeping in a warm environment, so you could just get away with like sheets and a blanket on the like air mattress? Or is it going to be cold and you may need something insulated, or you want to be able to cross use this into backpacking, so you're going to get like a sleeping pad and a sleeping bag? So first we'll go into tent. So I opt for a 2-person tent for 2 reasons. The first thing is I can fit a full-size air mattress inside my 2-person tent. I personally, when I'm car camping, I'm bougie. I want to sleep on an air mattress. I do not want to sleep on a little backpacking sleeping pad. And the second reason is that it's not as obvious that you're camping alone if you have if you're in a 2-person tent. These are just like minor details that I've thought over the years, but I remember bringing I think like a 3 or 4-person tent on my first ever alone car camping trip, just down in Yosemite, not too far from me, and being like, oh, well, I'm in a 3-person tent and people won't know I'm alone because I'm not in this like small 1-person tent. And it basically was just like a mental game to like make myself feel more safe. But that's something to always keep into consideration. And then secondly, never buy a tent full price. I am here to tell you tonight, you do not have to buy outdoor gear at full price. And this is something that I will stand on. Like my tent, I bought off of Facebook Marketplace. It came with a sleeping pad, the footprint of the tent, and it's like an REI dome 2-person passenger tent, whatever you want to call it. And I got it for like half off. Just someone I found on Facebook getting rid of all this outdoor gear, and I took a lot of it and I saved a lot of money. Next, your sleeping bag. So I think this is something that's highly individualized, and you're going to really tailor it to what you're doing. The 2 big things to keep into consideration are cost and climate. So for example, like I said, I live in the like Sierra Nevada mountains. I live at 6,200 feet. We have 30 to 40 degree like temperature swings almost on a daily basis every day in the summertime. So while it's 75 degrees during the day, we can get down to the 30s, and 40s at night. So I'm looking for a 3-season bag that can go down to like 15 to like 20 degrees is what's going to keep me warm when I'm camping. And then again, like how much do you want to spend? You can find these used. Do you want to find one used? That's up to you. I'll go into some places where you can find quality like used sleeping bags that I would trust, and just like lower cost sleeping bags. But with that being said, like read the reviews for every bag. I think people these days love having like their own opinion and love ripping on things they don't like on the internet because they can do it anonymously. If it's in your budget to splurge, go for it. But I mean, right before this presentation, I went onto REI. I clicked the REI outlet tab, which shows you a lot of their like on sale gear. And I found like probably 50 bags that were under $150, and then like probably 25 more that were under 100. So there are decent new sleeping bags out there. And this is something, your sleep system can really make or break your trip. Like if you're not sleeping well and you're cold or you're uncomfortable, you're not going to want to keep going. And you're not going to want to go do those things because you're not sleeping at night and you're not comfortable. So I think this is something to keep in mind, like creature comforts, Like I said, I'm bougie, and when I am car camping, 9 times out of 10, I got my 10-inch Intex air mattress that I bought from Walmart for $20 if it's in the back of my car and in my 2-person tent. And then lastly is going to be your day pack. So I think a lot of us, like we're talking about road tripping, but a lot of us are road tripping to go hiking and to go see things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be far, but when you are living out of your car, having a backpack that serves a purpose is good. So I personally am going to say to skip the JanSport book bag that we've all had, since middle school and high school, and go with something more technical that's geared towards hiking, with pockets designed to hold water bottles or a water bladder, and like snacks, jackets, all that kind of stuff. So for example, myself, I really enjoy having a water bladder that has a hose that like comes over my shoulder, and I can just like get water whenever I want. And I don't have to just like stop. I don't have to stop and drink water. How much do you want to put into your backpack is going to be a huge thing. And again, this is going to kind of get into like, what kind of climate are you like usually going to be going in? For example, again, we have 40-degree temperature swings here in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And if I'm hiking from sunup to sundown, or if I'm doing something all day, I need a jacket to wear in the morning. I'm going to take my jacket off to a long sleeve to get to a tank top when it's 75, 80 degrees at noon. And then by 5, 6 p.m., I'm going to need to put that jacket back on. So I need to think of a backpack that's going to be able to hold maybe a little more gear than someone who's just going to be hiking, when it's, 60 to 70 degrees out all day. Are you usually going to be putting like lunch and snacks into your backpack? Those things can take up a significant amount of space. I love backpacks that have like little pockets on the front for like my snacks. I think those are really handy, and it's like a great way to just have it right there. So this is just going to be something that's super, super personalized. I highly recommend going to your local REI, even like Shields, Bass Pro, anywhere you can find like outdoor gear. Try on backpacks. Just try them on. You don't have to buy them, but find what you like. Like I really like something that has a chest strap, and that's something that has a little bit of a higher waist belt. The lower waist belts are uncomfortable, but I like something that kind of sits above my hips for my waist belt. Not everyone likes features like that. Try on women's bags or backpacks. Try on men's backpacks, because I'll show you how to find. Next, I'll show you how to find like, used, new and used gear. So yeah. So there's other gear to consider. It's going to be shoes. It's very personalized item depending on what you are looking for and what kind of foot shape you have. Next is going to be your camp stove, and kind of going into like your like camp kitchen. I highly recommend either like the Ozark Trails brand, which is at Walmart, or the Schoemann. Both are they're good quality. They're little, they sit on a table. Again, your sleeping pad or air mattress. And then this is kind of a list of everything that you should have while you're car camping. So you don't really have to stop. So your toilet paper, personal products, tampons, pads, makeup remover, makeup, that kind of stuff, a poop scoop so you can dig a little hole and poop in it when you're hiking, fuel canisters, and a lighter. Make sure you get a fuel canister that is appropriate for like what your like camp stove is. So for example, I have a Jetboil that uses one kind of fuel canister, and I have a Coleman camp stove that uses another. A water jug, a headlamp, pots and pans, cutting board, reusable plates, bowls, cups, and utensils, a cooler, camp chairs, mini camp table, and aluminum foil, and some Tupperware for food and storage. So where can you find quality, used, inexpensive gear? So this is kind of a mix. These are what you're going to be your hard goods. So your hard goods are going to be tent, sleeping bag, kind of stuff like that. Walmart and big box stores are good for this stuff. REI has got an annual member garage sale that they do. I think it's like every September. REI also has what they call an outlet. on their on their website, and that's like a lot of gear that's on sale. You can sort by how much it's on sale for, what you're looking for. It's a really good resource. They also have a like used good option. Facebook Marketplace is where I have actually found like the vast majority of my stuff. People love buying stuff, using it for one season, and then getting rid of it. Craigslist is kind of similar to Facebook Marketplace. And then research used consignment gear stores in your area. If you work in like an industry, like if anyone here works on healthcare, you can get pro deals through this website called Expert Voice and Experticity. And like, for example, I get half off Big Agnes tents and sleeping bags and Black Diamond because I'm a nurse. The next is going to be Reddit Gear Trade and Ultralight Gear Trade. These can be really powerful resources to get quality used gear. And you can also post like a want to buy, like I want to buy something, and someone could message you with like what they have for sale. And then last, you can get gear rentals. Check out your university's like outdoor club. They do gear rentals. If you have an outdoor club at your university or like REI, look up like seriously like any store brand, type in like brand gear rental, and you never know what you're going to find. So kind of going through this still, this is going to be your soft goods. So this is going to be more like your jackets, backpacks, shorts, kind of stuff like that. They're pretty similar on the list, except for I also recommend Poshmark. I found some like Patagonia jackets and like North Face stuff on Poshmarks. It's hard, but it's out there. And like, I mean, I've sold outdoor gear on Poshmark. So that's definitely possible. And thrift stores, check your thrift stores. A lot of quality used stuff that you can find at thrift stores. All right.
So we are about 50 minutes in, so I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter than we were anticipating. But just talking a little bit about how to save money on the road. These sorts of trips can get really expensive if you're going out all the time, if you decide, you want to stay in a hotel every couple of days. So the big ways to save money are going to be gearing down your accommodations. If you can avoid private campsites for a couple nights and sleep in your car, or find some BLM land, something free that's going to cut down your expenses. We already touched on finding budget gear, but you probably don't need a lot of brand new gear for a trip like this. Go find used. Use what you already have. A big one that can't really be negotiated a lot is your car expenses and the gas you're going to be spending. So if you have the option between a couple of different vehicles, I always say to go with the smaller vehicle. But that also depends on where exactly you're going and what routes and what your car needs to do for you. But if you can find a way to take a sedan instead of a Hummer or a Jeep, that's going to save you a lot of money on gas. My little Ford Focus that I do these trips in can get 45 to 50 miles per gallon. And if I'm, really smart about it, I can do, several thousand miles and really pay like $100 in gas. So definitely do that. And there's a lot of gas programs to save. If you're saving just 5 or 10 cents a gallon, that adds up really quick when you're on the road. Food is the big one. If you can cook all of your own meals, that will save you a ton of money. You don't realize exactly how much money you're spending on fast food and gas station food until after your trip. So just if you can make it work with some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and some ramen, or even fancy it up. I make a lot of meals with meat and rice and veggies. You're still going to be saving a lot more money than if you were eating out every night. As far as permits, passes, and activities go, the biggest money saving tip I can give you, if you are doing a lot of national parks, and that means national parks, national monuments, national forest land, and even some BLM land, except the America the Beautiful passes. Definitely invest in them. They're only $80 a year. For reference, Yosemite, Grand Canyon, Zion, Bryce, they're all $35 a visit. So with 2 or 3 visits to any of these big parks, you've already made your money back. Souvenirs is a big one. If you're spending a ton of money at every place, trying to soak up the experience and bring stuff home, you're going to end up spending a lot. I'm going to touch a little bit more on that in the next slide. And then you're just going to have miscellaneous expenses. There's going to be an emergency. Like, there's a very good chance something will go wrong. So having a little bit of spare money is never a bad idea. I often hear solo road trippers and people who do stuff like this, their goal tends to be like a daily amount, and that they want to spend somewhere between $25 and $50 a day, all said and done, with their campsite, with their food, with whatever gear. Remember to factor in how much fuel you're using, like with your gas stove and things. So, I mean, you could definitely move that up or down, but that tends to be the range that most young people I see who are doing this are tending to spend. So Maggie and I are going to touch on some just really general money saving tips that we've learned. So my big ones are buying cheap souvenirs, or just go without them. You won't have a lot of space for big souvenirs anyways. So a big part of it is like, go for small items, go for stickers or patches. I also love hitting thrift stores, especially like right now in Zion. And all of the little towns have very outdoorsy themed thrift shops. So it's a great place to get soft goods. And it also means that when I'm, packing up for a trip, I get to think about like, oh, I bought this vest I'm wearing in this little town in Wisconsin. So you get that sort of experience. I know that my family and my friends expected gifts and souvenirs from my road trip, and there's just no way that could work. If you spend $5 or $10 a person, you've got 5 to 10 people, and you're hitting so many of these places. It adds up really quick, and you're not going to have room for it. So I started sending postcards, which I found people really loved, and I've been asked by like everyone I know to send them more postcards when I do things, which I guess stamps are getting expensive, so don't know how well this is working out. Another one, like we touched on this earlier, but cook all your own meals. If you're spending $10 a meal, and that's conservative in a lot of places, 2 or 3 meals a day, that's $30 right there on food. Whereas I've done road trips where I'm spending $30 a week on food. So it's a really good place to cut. Keep in mind though that sometimes food is part of the experience, and you might want to budget in a little bit, of splurge items. I know a lot of people splurge, say at Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas. It's the only place you can get beer that's brewed with hot spring water, and it's like the only brewery that exists in a national park. So I know that's a to-do for a lot of people. So when you've got those sorts of items, or the ice cream at Mount Rushmore that everybody says you have to get, but I don't think you have to get, but apparently it's a thing, budget those sorts of things in as well. Resupplying in small to medium cities, this is mainly geared towards if you're doing a longer trip, more than 2 weeks long. The small towns tend to have more expensive prices, and then large cities also have expensive prices, but those small to medium areas are a really good place to pick up groceries, to do your laundry, to buy ice, any of the other things you need to resupply. Set a daily budget and stick to it. Personally, my daily budget is about $30 to $35, and if you stick to it, you'll be fine. And I try to even go under that, and have a few extra dollars for when I come home. Talk again about getting the America the Beautiful Federal Pass, again, $80 a year. If you're visiting a lot of the parks in California, getting a state park pass might work for you as well. Any other state park passes, they vary in value, but for those West Coast people, or a lot of people to California only road trips, they will save you cash. And then my last one is never pay for water. At a couple of gallons of water a day for things, that adds up quick. and you can get water for free, especially if you're hanging out in national parks, just about everywhere. So I keep a couple of plastic gallon containers in my car at all times, partially for safety, but I resupply all my water. I don't know the last time I paid for a gallon of water. Maggie?
Yeah, so I mean, my tips are pretty similar to Bailey's. Basically, don't stop at that super cute small town general store. It's 3 times the price as what you should be paying for. Create a meal plan or research like low cost recipes to reuse while you're on the road. Gas station snacks will eat up your budget. Surprisingly, they're pretty expensive. A reusable water bottle and free water more than like buying like a flat case of water. That'll really save your money. So we're gonna move into like trail and camping etiquette, like super brief. We'll kind of go through this. So I hope a lot of you have heard of the leave no trace principles. And if you haven't, I'm just going to go through them really quick. Plan ahead and prepare. Travel and camp on durable surfaces. Don't go driving into a meadow. Don't walk off trail. It actually will really damage the ecosystem. Dispose of your waste properly. Pack it in, pack it out. It goes beyond that. Pack out your toilet paper. Pack out your feminine hygiene products. Leave what you find. So I'm sorry, but don't pick up that flower. That's something I actually learned last summer. Don't pick the flower, because if everyone picks that really pretty flower, then there's going to be none left for anyone else to see. Minimize your campfire impact. Try to only do, if you need to do a fire, do it in an established camp ring. Be considerate of other visitors. Noise at camp and on trail, and then bring a trash bag to actually collect other garbage you see on the trail and bring it out and leave the trail more beautiful for other people.
So the biggest thing then, I'm so sorry.
Oh no, go on.
Yeah, so the biggest concern people come to me with when I tell them that this is what I do, I solo hike and travel, especially, in national parks, they talk to me about wildlife, and they're like, well, aren't you scared of things? And this is going to touch on that a little bit. So first of all, don't mess with the animals. There's a reason there's so many signs saying don't feed them. Seriously, that's how these animals get socialized. And that's not good for the animals. That's not good for us. We want to continue to keep that boundary between them. Part of that is always locking your food up. So I know it's tempting after a long day to just leave your food and sometimes even your cook set out, on the table. And you're like, it's going to be fine. Just go throw it in a bear box or in your car, or if you have a bear canister, or if you're doing a bear hang. It's for you, and it's also for your neighbors, especially if you're in an established campground. It's for the animals, because then they won't become reliant on this source of food. And then it's for everyone else. There was a big problem at my favorite park, Lassen Volcanic National Park, last year, because a bear was able to acquire some backpackers' food, and they ended up having to shut down a ton of backcountry because this bear had become so normalized to getting food from backpackers that it was being aggressive to backpackers. And when things like that happen, they tend to try to dispose of the bear, which that's not a good idea for everyone. Social distancing isn't just for us. Give them their space too. A whole lot more than the 6 feet though. There's a lot of signs at your bigger national parks, say Yellowstone, that have a lot of wildlife that'll tell you exactly how far away you need to be from the wildlife you encounter. Of course, things always happen, and sometimes you will be closer to an animal than you anticipate. A big part of that is just backing away slowly, remaining calm, and creating that barrier again. Before you enter parks, it's always a great idea to research which animals you could be encountering there and knowing how to deal with that. So again, Yellowstone or the Grand Tetons, you're going to be dealing with black bears and brown bears. Black bears are the ones that you can scare off. Brown bears are the ones that you really don't want to have to encounter. But regardless, both parks encourage bear spray heavily. Other parks don't have as many issues with bears, but they may have issues with coyotes or mountain lions or snakes, or in certain parts, alligators. So just research exactly where you're going, research what you're most likely to be dealing with. But honestly, you're probably going to be just seeing a lot of socialized deer, maybe some squirrels, like a raccoon. You're probably not going to be encountering any big, bad, scary ones.
So that's a perfect segue into safety. It's highly personalized and it's really different for everyone. So, but basically the bottom line is if you don't feel comfortable, leave. So a little bit into your first aid basics. You can look onto the right-hand side and see what I kind of put in my ideal first aid kit. But basically your first aid kit should basically be able to treat minor cuts, burns, and scrapes, overuse, aches and pains, minor allergic reactions, diarrhea, and acute mountain sickness, and maybe a few other things. For example, blisters. I always get blisters, so I always make sure I have Leukotape on hand for me for my blisters that I get. I highly recommend a homemade first aid kit. It's less expensive. You can customize it to what you're doing, but a commercial first aid kit is also fine in a pinch.
So jumping into car safety. I'm so sorry. Am I cutting you off, Maggie?
No, go.
Okay, perfect. Unfortunately, I've had some experiences that have reminded me how important car safety is. Making sure your car is still going to be an acceptable shelter. So always be mindful of where your next gas station is. Just yesterday, I was in a point where I didn't have a gas station for 140 miles. And so if I were running a low tank, that would have been a really big issue. But part of that is also, especially on the West Coast, East Coast, this isn't quite as big of a problem. But on the West, you have a lot of dead zones. Making sure that you are refilling at that half or quarter of a tank level, depending on your comfort. Especially on the West Coast, there's been wildfires, and when that sort of stuff happens, you won't be able to stop at a gas station in a natural disaster. Or everybody else has the same idea, it is stocking up gas, and by the time you get there, there won't be any. So having quite a bit of gas on you is always a great idea. I highly recommend going in for an oil change and like a 33 or whatever point check your local automotive shop has to offer. Just get everything checked up, especially if you're not great like with cars like I am. Investing in a roadside assistance plan, such as AAA. I thought this was a waste of money for a very long time. And last year I got stuck in the Utah desert and had to be towed 95 miles, which would have come out, they had to emergency pull me out of there. It would have come out to about $2,500. AAA paid the entire thing. They paid for my new tire, or they had my tires patched. So it was completely free. I walked away with, just some minor scrapes and bruises and being a little more scared of things. But again, losing $2,500 for a big tow like that can make or break your trip. So for $100 or so bucks a year for AAA, can't recommend it enough. Know the limits of your vehicle and your driving abilities. So I do a lot of my traveling in a sedan. That means that some of these gravel roads really aren't meant for me. So just know where you feel about that. Also know how comfortable you are with driving long distances, driving mountain roads, and driving for long periods of time. That's highly personalized, different for everyone. And then learning how to troubleshoot really basic issues with your car, what to do if, something's leaking, what to do if you've got a flat tire, that sort of deal. Just even having a book on you will help. And then again, having AAA or something can also help because you've got a few calls a year that you can use. And I've just done that. I've been like, I don't feel like changing a tire on the side of this mountain road in the middle of the night, so I'm going to have AAA do it. always keep some gear in your car. You never know where you're going to get stranded somewhere. So keeping water, I tend to use the 1 gallon per person per day rule that is common in the desert, even if I'm not in the desert. It just makes me feel safer. Carry some snacks as well. I've heard about people who have had to go on much longer, harder hikes than they anticipate and are absolutely famished by the time they come back. And sometimes it's 40 or 50 miles to your next town or resupply. So having that on you is always a great idea. Keeping a paper road map. You will eventually get to a place where you don't have cell service and you're lost. So having a paper road map is a great idea. Last week, actually, there was a massive landslide on Highway 101. So we ended up having to find a detour, and Google Maps was sending us on a really weird route that I didn't understand. And so I pulled out my paper map and realized that the route that Google Maps was trying to send us on was a seasonal route that was not maintained, was rough gravel, 4-wheel drive only in the summer, and completely inaccessible in winter. So we avoided getting stuck up there like a lot of other people did, and were able to plan our miserable 8-hour detour back to our campsite. Keeping extra blankets. You probably will have your sleeping bag on you, but in that instance, our base camp was 30 miles away, but no longer accessible because of landslide. Something similar could happen to you. I'm now leaving an extra blanket in my car. Tire chains are always a good one. You never know when you might encounter snow, especially if you don't have all-season tires or you're not familiar with driving in the snow too often. Tire pressure gauge, spare tire and tools, those sorts of basics. Paper and pen will come in handy more often than you believe. Pen especially, you might have to, I can almost guarantee you'll have to write out something at some point, and a pen will save your life. And then keeping cash on you. Your card, you lose your card, or something happens, or your card's being declined, or you get to an area that only accepts cash for some reason. Carrying that on you will come in handy eventually. And then we're moving into personal protection. So this is a really different subject for everyone. And we can't tell you exactly what to do on this. It's up to your comfort level. And what you feel most comfortable using. So if you don't feel comfortable using one of these items, then it's not the item for you. But definitely the most common ones I see solo female travelers use, going to be a Swiss Army knife or a pocket knife. It's more of a scare tactic than anything else, but it'll help. A whistle is always a good one. It's a really good way to call it for help or just get attention for yourself. Bear spray, even if you're in areas without bear spray, I've heard it's very effective against humans. And I've heard several female solo travelers who say they hike with bear spray every time, even if there are no bears in the area, just because it makes them feel safe. Pepper spray is a good one. It's an easy one to just keep in your pocket, or personally, I keep mine on my keys. So it's always very accessible. And then last up is going to be an satellite SOS type advice. So that's going to be like your Garmin InReach. If you're in an area without cell service, in backcountry, or honestly in a lot of parts of the US, it will come in handy. And it gives you a nice peace of mind that in case you need help, you can reach out for it. It'll also give your family and your friends a lot of peace of mind. I know my parents were very nervous when I started doing this, because they were like, how can we reach you and make sure you're okay every day? And being able to text, through a satellite device, once a night, or whatever, just to give them that peace of mind is kind of worth every penny. It is probably the most expensive piece of gear you will buy, and that's a piece of gear that is hard to find used. But I can't tell you one person who regrets buying it.
So we are kind of moving in. This is like our last slide here. So we'll go through this quickly and then we can get into questions and answers if anyone wants that. I know I've gotten a couple sent to me, but basically it's just like how to handle personal interactions. The most dangerous animal out there is a man. So the number one thing is never, ever, ever give your camp location. Don't tell people where you want to camp. Don't tell them the area. I think that's super important. I personally, when I'm hiking, even if I'm hiking in the trails right outside of my house, I always say, oh, my friend's right behind me. My friend's ahead of me. You didn't see my friend up the trail when someone's like, oh, are you out here alone? No, I'm not out here alone. And speak with confidence and act with confidence. Like, you got this. And also, like, park rangers are everywhere in national parks. I have ran into a park ranger in some like remote area of Yosemite that I never thought I would see one. Tell them, be like, hey, I saw this guy. This is what he looked like. This is what he was wearing. And he was creepy as hell. Don't tell anyone you're alone, as well as like never give your camp location out except for rangers if you have a weird kind of awfully vibe. And then if in need, when you need help, find help. Another solo female traveler, older mother type figures, older females are also great go-tos. And then lastly, be mindful of where you are and just kind of learn to blend in. And as always, be aware of your surroundings. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give for this. Is just be aware of your surroundings. So, all right. So lastly, we just have question and answers. This is literally for anyone out there who has made it through the last hour. So we literally thought we would talk for 30 minutes and then do questions and answers. And we talked for an hour. So for those who made it through, thank you. I hope this was really helpful for you guys. And huge thanks to Shelby who hosted us tonight on her Zoom account. That was really awesome. We could have not put this on without that. So I will start with the question that got sent to me was, do I ever feel unsafe at the campgrounds that are way off the beaten path in the middle of nowhere? So the answer is yes and no. And when I would have first started this, like my first like solo road trips were very close to home. I was like one night and then I slowly like branched out and branched out and branched out. And the more confidence I got in being alone, the less scared I was. There always still is going to be a little element of, I guess, like, I don't know if it's scaredness or for me, it's like being aware of how big the universe is and how alone I am in this universe and that I may not see someone else out here and there could someone else could be out here that I don't see, but I'm aware of that, but I'm ready if like something happens basically. And as always, like when in doubt, leave. I've left multiple times. I'm like, this is scary. I don't want to be here. And like went and like camped closer to like the highway. But I've also stayed in some really beautiful places that I was scared in as well. So that's kind of what I got sent to me. Does anyone have any like questions they want? Feel free to unmute yourself or like raise your hand or put them in the chat. I can have like everything up as well.
Yeah, if you have a minute, showering. When you are out there, when you're like going to not be home for like a week or two, do you just plan to book a campsite with an amenity at like a certain time, or how do you usually handle that?
Yeah, so let me handle this one because this is a big one for me. It depends. A lot of the time, when I do anything over a week long, I tend to book some sort of hotel or Airbnb or a very amenity heavy campground. In order to get my hot shower in, I like to really get my hair done and dried and like to have that amenity as well. It's also a great point in order to do your laundry. It tends to be a little safer and a little less expensive than going to a laundromat. It's also a great point for just getting refocused. So I highly recommend doing some sort of break every week or two and getting that shower in. As well, things happen. You might get a little dirtied up when you don't anticipate it. Most national parks, especially the big ones, will have pay showers that you can also find. And a lot of the pay showers at campgrounds you can use even if you're not staying at that campground. You can also shower nationwide if you've got like a Planet Fitness or some other branded, like large brand gym membership. And then truck stops that are, and like travel centers also have really nice bathrooms and shower stations. If you're looking for a top tier shower, that is the place to go. And they typically have towel service and the whole 9 yards. A lot of them even have your shampoo, conditioner, so you don't have to worry about hauling that in from your car. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I got another question sent to me. As a nurse, how do you make time to do trips? I'm also an RN and will be starting a new job with some more flexibility, which gives me hope compared to my last RN job. So for those of you who don't know, nurses typically work 36 hours. We work 3 12-hour shifts a week. So I can take 8 days off without taking 1 day of PTO. So I will work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I will then have Thursday to the following Thursday off, which is 8 days. And then I work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You can extend that as much as you want. So I'll work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'll take the rest of that week off, the whole next week. And I can basically take 2 weeks off with only taking like 36 hours of PTO. My job allows me, since I work inpatient, my job allows us to self-schedule as much as possible. But I also plan trips out 6 months in advance, so I can ask time off from work like that far off in advance. So right now it's February. I have like trips planned for like I have like a bunch of days off in June for my birthday. I'm looking forward to September and taking time off for a trip in September and then another trip in October. So again, I'm just like really looking ahead, and I will literally work 7 days in a row if it means I get like 10 days off after that to go on a trip. So I hope that helps. Another one, I have a couple friends who are interested in trying backpacking. They're beginners, like never slept a night outside. Any tips for making their first experience not overwhelming? Don't go far. I remember in college, I took some friends, not even backpacking, I took friends camping 20 minutes from where we went to college, and they literally bailed like 3 hours into the night. So I would say make it like as comfortable for them as possible. Like obviously they're going to need like a sleeping bag and sleeping pad. Make sure they have something that is not that they like or that they're going to be warm in. I think the reason people bail most of the time is that they're cold and that they're hungry. So make sure they have something to eat and a warm like cup of coffee and like a warm place to sleep. I think that is kind of my tip. But yeah, maybe don't go more than like 5 to 10 miles on a trail, because yeah, I would just say start slow and start short. And then someone said, would we be open to setting up a Google folder doc to something we can all contribute tips to? There is a Google Doc. I will reshare it on the original thread or like on the group. I'll just reshare it and then people can just post whatever they want in there. I think that's really great. Yeah. Does anyone...
Is that everything?
Yeah, do we have any more questions that we can answer for people? And you can always reach out to us. I'm very easy to get a hold of on Facebook and Instagram. So
same here, as long as I'm not out and about.
All right, so I think we'll go ahead and end this. Again, I want to thank everyone so much for being here. This was like really exciting. I've never done anything like this. And to be able to share all this information is awesome. So I'm glad you guys were all here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. We're really, really glad to host y'all, and hope you guys could all take, a little bit of information from this. Hope this was useful.
All right. Well, you guys take care tonight.
All right, thank you
All
guys.
right, bye guys.
Bye.